Actually, it wasn't the torture that the audience would have found most disturbing. It was the king who changed his mind. Remember, the king originally forgave the debtor, his debt was wiped, but it obviously wasn't forgotten. When the debtor transgressed again, the king heard of it and uncleared the debt. So the theological question is not just whether the God of Jesus is into excessive punishment and torture. It's also whether the God of Jesus forgives but doesn't forget. When we are forgiven, is it conditional on our continuing to be good? If it is, bearing in mind how many mess-ups we can and do make, are any of us ever really forgiven? So this is a parable that challenges us. It asks us whether we are prepared to take seriously the tasks of healing the wrongs in our community. Like for like justice might satisfy our desire for vengeance, but it doesn't restore community well-being, and it sure doesn't make for a safer world. We need our leaders to model compassion so that by offering hope to offenders, hope is offered to us all. The story also challenges us regarding whose job justice is. It's tempting to want to leave justice to a judge, a president, a king, or a god, and then criticize them when they don't do what we want. The transformation needed to build a just community involves us all. Tougher sentences and more and bigger prisons are signs of failure. Failure to listen, failure to initiate change, failure to help one another. Yet forgiveness is hard work. It's not a simple matter of saying sorry and the other saying, that's all right, you're forgiven, let's have a beer and forget about it. Forgiving someone who has used violence, for example, involves a process of protection, education, and reconciliation for the community. A primary school teacher once explained to her students, she took a block of wood and hammered a nail into it. She said, "Every time I hit this, I want you to think of a time you were shunned or verbally or physically abused." She pounded away at the nail. And then she pulled the nail out and said, "This is the I'm sorry." But she said, what are we going to do with the hole that's still left in the wood? When you hurt another person, you make a hole in that person that saying I'm sorry doesn't fix. There needs to be the I'm sorry, but in addition, steps to making sure it doesn't happen again, and an offering to the person hurt in order to aid the healing. There needs to be resolution, restitution, and reconstitution of the relationships. This parable is also a story that doesn't tell us what God is like. It does say God is not like that king. When the king in the story replays violence with excessive violence, it results in theological crime, not transformed community. But the parable doesn't spell out what God would do. How would God, sitting in the king's stead, treat the unforgiving servant? Would God just say, "I forgive you, see you later"? I prefer not to think of God as a being sitting or saying anything. I think of God in this instance as a transformative energy that is present when people work at forgiveness. When people work at mixing justice and mercy, consequences and compassion, in order that hope and healing happens in the community.